Hey everyone, it's Evan Kirstel. Have a fantastic guest, one of the titans in the podcasting industry, Jordan Harbinger. Jordan, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. And I see you're a fan of the piano there with your
I'm
with
not
your
playing
backdrop.
piano today, but I am going to talk about creativity and creators, and you are really the top of my list. I'm just so fascinated by you and your work, and it's really a joy to chat with you live. Um, where do we start with your bio? Because it's so fascinating. Wall Street lawyer turned content creator, podcaster extraordinaire. What was your first exposure to digital? Maybe start there, this world of podcasting
Sure.
and digital content creation.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. A long time ago, when I first started teaching a class about networking at law school, just not even as an elective, just as an informal sort of almost like a club, I started recording my first shows. They weren't even shows. I started recording things I was talking about onto my Sony mini disc player to sort of put a
Love it.
very obvious timestamp on things. Most people are like, what is that? And then I thought I need a way to distribute the sound files on the internet. And there wasn't really anybody doing that. It wasn't really, there was no sort of central, first of all, SoundCloud didn't exist. YouTube did not exist. Podcasting, I didn't know existed. It was brand new. It was maybe a year or two old by then. This is 2006. But I've kind of always been into stuff like internet relay chat and Usenet news groups, which a lot of people again have not heard of, but it's sort of like deeper web stuff that mostly was relegated exclusively and still is in many ways relegated exclusively to geeks. And that's especially true in the 90s when I started getting into this. So I was doing internet stuff when I was a teenager, and I don't just mean AOL. I mean like log into the library internet provider, navigate to the IRC thing, take over a Linux machine or a Unix machine, or get an account on a Unix box that's at Emory University, which now I realize is like a felony, but back then was just kind of harmless fun from my house. You know, now I realize, wow, if you get caught doing that, they're going to try and find out who you are and mess with you. Whereas back then it was like, oh, we got hackers again. Delete, delete, delete. You know, make sure block this admin account, reinstall Unix. So I'm not. I'm kind of lucky that I got to mess around during those carefree days when, yeah, a system administrator would catch you inside a system and they would just be like, go away and don't come back. Or they would just disconnect you or delete your account. They didn't call the FBI because there was no point, probably. But also they just figured, oh, it's these guys again, or it's a student. Who cares?
I
Now
love
it's a
it.
federal crime.
We could do a whole show on your hacking exploits. You gave a fantastic talk at DEF CON
Oh,
to
yeah.
the cybersecurity community years ago. It's still being talked about. But fast forwarding a bit, 2018, it seems like a lifetime ago, but
Yeah.
only a few years ago, you started the Jordan Harbinger Show. What was the first episode like, and what were your expectations, hopes, desires around this new show?
Sure. So I'd been doing another show, just for clarity for the audience here. I'd been doing another show for 11 years before that. So people are like, wait, thought he
That's
said
quite a run.
2006. So yeah, 11 years before this even current iteration. So this current iteration, the Jordan Harbinger show, I expected it to take a really long time to build up, to take 11 years to get to, I don't know, whatever I was at, 100,000 downloads, whatever metric it was we were at. I think we're at 100,000 downloads an episode or something along those lines.
Wow.
Instead, it took like a year, maybe not even quite that long. And the profit margins were higher and the growth was, we were probably growing in a couple of weeks what my previous show had grown in a year. And that was in part because of the way that I had been building a brand for 11 years, but also just shows you that growing a podcast in 2007 and 2008, where barely anybody knew what they were, and there was kind of only Apple Podcasts and maybe some other weird apps and clients that you could get for your iPhone. Now it's like such a universal medium. I was immediately able to get into what I think was the Spotify beta, where there were just a few podcasts in Spotify and nobody was using them and they weren't promoting them, et cetera. And it was just a lot faster. But I don't know. I kind of came into podcasting both in 2006 and in 2018 with very limited expectations. I certainly was not thinking I'm going to be an internet celebrity or whatever. That was not on my docket. I still think that modest amounts of notoriety are overrated. Most notoriety in general is overrated. But I didn't even think this would be a living. Certainly in 2006, I was an attorney. And then in 2018, I was doing podcasting professionally, but I was like, can I survive on this? Yes, if I cut my team back to the core production team, we can all make a nice living doing this. Not going to be rich, but it'll be fun. I don't have to get a real, quote unquote, real job. And now I'm thinking, how on earth did I feel like the luckiest guy in the world, because all I do is talk to really smart people after reading their book and watching their documentary in my studio, which is in my house. I mean, my baby's bedroom is a couple rooms that way. I kind of hang out with my wife and kids all day. This is what I do. And I just happen to get compensated really well for it. So it's actually in many ways a dream come true, because when I was really young, I wanted to be a radio talk show host, but I remember thinking, the music stuff isn't the exciting stuff. The exciting stuff is what the FM DJs are doing when they're talking, but they don't really get to talk that much. Not like these boring AM DJs who are just, or if whatever you call them, who are reading the news. There's got to be a hybrid where you can be fun and smart and interesting. And so the morning show stuff I listened to in high school was really what I thought was great, except I didn't want it to be comedy because I thought those were dumb. I grew up in Detroit, so we had Drew and Mike, and it was okay, but it was mostly fart jokes. It was like nothing... Nothing grabber. And I thought, what if we took the news and smart commentary and we had smart people coming in and we could have intelligent conversations that were entertaining, and we did that on the radio? And it's funny because now, what a not novel concept that is. What a totally not that unusual concept for a show that is. But in the 90s, that basically didn't exist. If there were FM radio talk shows that were not about music, I don't know what they were. And if there were news ones, they were on AM, which is dead.
And so you absolutely have the best guests in the industry. It's a who's who. I'm not going to start rattling off names because folks can explore for themselves. But you have a knack for getting guests. That must have been hard in the early days. So how did you network and build relationships to kind of get people on your show, which is, quite an ask of time and effort?
Yeah, in the beginning, it was really hard. I know when I first started the show in 2006, it's kind of funny. I think back to it now. I remember texting people and being like, I haven't released a podcast in a couple weeks. I should probably do that because like subscribers are emailing me and telling me they want to hear something. I'll text a bunch of my friends and see who wants to be on. And I remember people being like, lose my number. Don't ask me to be on your show again. God, I'm so annoyed. Or like, I'm going to pass on doing your thing in your basement, but let me know if you want to go out for a drink later. And, I had that, and it was like, it's kind of a cliche joke now about trying to get guests on your show, because podcasters often interview each other like we're doing right now. And people are like, let me guess, the podcast where you interview other podcasters? No, thanks. It's just kind of a funny cliche where we poke fun at each other. And now it's totally different, of course, because now publicists will go, Jordan, do you want to have this guy on? He's got a book or a movie. And I'll say, well, I don't know, sell me on the idea. And I laugh sometimes to myself because I go, how far we've come from me begging publishers to send me free galleys of a book and then being like, well, we don't know if we want to waste one on a podcaster, to me now being like, don't send me any more books. I'm not going to read them. I will only read it if I request it. Stop mailing me books. It's bad for the environment. They're going straight to Goodwill. They don't even want your stupid book. like, stop mailing me books. So it's funny that it's kind of come and completely flipped it on its head. But yeah, in the beginning, when I started getting high quality guests and not just texting my friends at 9 p.m. and pissing them off to ask them to be on my show, I did reach out to people and get warm introductions. And I would say something like, look, the show is not that big, but it's got 5,000 really dedicated readers. And how many books are you trying to sell with a media appearance? If you sell a couple hundred, that's really, really good. So you should come and do my show. And
that's brilliant.
More so you can, if you say, hey, this is a psychology show or a show about science or a show about this. And then also I would take testimonials from people that I knew who came on and said, oh, I sold books because those people emailed me and said they heard about me on your show. I would take those testimonials and I would send them to the publishers or the publicist or the author, or I'd skip the publicist because the publicist would say, "Oh, we got him a feature in New Yorker. We don't need to do any other media." And I'm thinking, "Yeah, you do. You have to do a lot more media because nobody's going to care that you got this person on. Even if you get him on Good Morning America, you think you're going to sell 5,000 books from that? You're going to sell 50 if you're lucky.
Right.
Nobody cares. They're driving or they're making breakfast for their kids when they hear or see this." So I started to say, look, this is a focused audience of people that are interested in your topic. You're not coming on a 3-minute segment on Fox News in the morning. This isn't Morning Joe or whatever. This is a focused segment of people that are going to be interested in what you have to say. And then that combined with the testimonials from other authors. Hey, this basically what you're trying to signal is not like this is a big opportunity for you. What you're trying to signal is this is not a giant waste of your time like most media. That's the bar you're trying to cross. Not this is Joe Rogan or Oprah. This is all you're trying to do is say, if you book this, you're not going to go, God, that was terrible and a waste of time and painful, and I had to lead the whole thing. You're going to come away with it going, okay, that was at least sort of fun and entertaining, and then you're going to sell enough books where your time wasn't wasted. That's the bar. It's pretty low. And fortunately, the bar really is still there because with media being so competitive now and there being so many books, and I think now it's kind of the cat's out of the bag with TV not converting, with radio also not converting. So the same publicists that would kind of like not even be kind enough to respond to a podcaster's email 5 years ago are now realizing that they should only really focus on podcasts. And if they get some TV, great. If they get some radio, fine. But, magazine feature, maybe, sure, especially if it's like The Atlantic. But really, your bang for your buck is going to be in booking a bunch of really good podcasts that people are interested in.
Fantastic advice. Free advice. I know you charge for advice, so it's appreciated here. Do you have time to do personal coaching, by the way, or is that sort of gone by the wayside?
I do. It's mostly gone by the wayside, but I do consulting mostly for corporate and nonprofit organizations. Nice. I don't do like I'll take a call with anyone because I charge a charity fee. And what I mean by that is I charge for consulting, but I donate all the money to charity, which is good because
Wonderful.
I will be able to charge for my time, but then not look like a jerk who's overvaluing his time. Like, oh, this guy will only get on the phone for $500. What a jerk. It's like, well, the $500 goes and buys a bunch of kids who can't afford food, school lunch. So who's the jerk now? So it keeps people serious. But I do that stuff. I would say a few hours a week. It's not a ton. I don't do day-long workshops anymore or anything like that, with very rare exceptions. I did one I've done a couple for like U.S. government and intelligence agencies because I thought this will be fun. It'll be interesting. It'll be a way to help the country out or the other country out, depending on if I'm overseas or here in the United States. But it's not my business, and I don't love it. I don't go, all right, workshop time. I go, okay, this is going to be a long day. Whereas with podcasts and discussions, that's a different story. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about it. Life's too short to do anything but that kind of work, in my opinion.
So hundreds of episodes, I think 700, 800, if I recall. Hundreds
we're
of guests.
700 something right now on this current show, and I left my last show at 700 something, I think, or close to it.
Let's not let that be a bad portent of things to come. But hopefully 700 more.
Oh yeah.
Of all the wisdom you've heard and guests you've had, are there a couple really memorable moments that just you can't forget that you could share?
Yeah, I'm sure that there are. I wish I'd come armed with some. I mean, yeah, one that comes in particular, I went to interview Howie Mandel, who's a comedian judge on America's Got Talent. And we went there, and his whole team was super cool, really nice. We walked in, we got a tour of the office. We looked at all his memorabilia and stuff. And he spent like 4 hours with us, and I felt kind of bad because, you go in for an hour and the team's like, all right, and it's an hour and a half. All right, fine. And then I remember in the middle, we were like, we've taken up tons of your time. We better wrap soon. And he goes, no, I'm just leaving after this. I'm not doing anything after this. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And he's like, yeah, take all the time you need. So then we watched an episode after we did the show and after the office tour. We watched an episode of America's Got Talent with him and I got to be like, how come you do this? What's this all about? What's that thing all about? How come this works? How come that cup doesn't have, you know how they have like the Dunkin' Donuts cups
I love it.
or at the and I go, how come? So they tell you to face the logo out, and they're like, oh, he's like, there's a guy whose job it is just to make sure that the logo is facing the camera at all times. And I said, how come it doesn't get blurry? Because shouldn't there be condensation on it, or is it empty? And he goes, no, it's full, but it's a special stage cup that doesn't sweat or change at all, and it doesn't reflect light. Because the lights are really bright. There's no glare. It's just like a real special paint on it that doesn't change at all, doesn't reflect light. It's like always visible and highly contrast, high contrast on the camera, but it actually does have a coffee or water in it. And then I'd say, how come you gave this guy the golden buzzer and you didn't? So it was really cool because it's kind of like watching a DVD and then you turn on the director's cut, except I can actually ask the director who's sitting next to me what's going on with this, and this. I mean, it would be like watching one of your favorite movies with the director and saying, how come when you filmed it, you did this way? You know, that was pretty cool to do for a big show like America's Got Talent with a judge for America's Got Talent in his office after doing kind of like an in-depth thing. And I that really sticks out as a cool experience because not every podcast is like that, right? Sometimes you get there, the guest is late, they forgot it was that day, they're not ready, they're in sweats, they need another hour, they only have 40 minutes instead of an hour and a half to talk to you, and then they get interrupted 87 times with phone calls, their assistant, and they want to eat a sandwich during the show because it's going over their lunch hour now, and it's like, well, this isn't ideal, you know. Russell Brand was also a good one. Speaking of sandwiches, he was hilarious. They did this whole thing and canceled it and moved it and then canceled it again and then moved it and then finally they were going to cancel it. And I said, I flew down to LA and got a hotel for this. I'm outside, and they were like, "Can you do this in the green room at Ellen DeGeneres, because that's where we are and we're going somewhere else right after this?" And I show up and they're like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I'm interviewing Russell Brand." And they're like, "On television? Because this is not your studio." And I'm like, "No, in the green room." And they're like, "Okay." So we go into this green room that's the size of a frickin' closet. It's hot in there because there's two people, a table, and equipment now instead of just a guy looking at his hair. And then they're like, "Here's your lunch." And he's eating a sandwich and he's like, "This is incredibly awkward. Do you want some of this?" And I was like, "No, thanks. Just eat your sandwich during our interview." And he's like, no, this is ridiculous. I'll eat this in the car. So he gives it back to his assistant. We have the conversation, but we're in this green room. And I'm like, every few minutes, I'm poking my head out. And I'm like, "Excuse me, can you be quiet? I'm doing an interview in here." And all these like producers for Ellen and whoever else were like, "Oh, okay." Guy doing an interview in the green room. And they're like, "What is this? Who is this? Is this a bit? I don't understand what's going on." So there's a lot of stuff like that where you're just kind of operating on the fly, and some of it makes for a really good experience and some of it makes for kind of a funny but bad experience. And I'll leave you with one more inside story that's funny and obnoxious at the same time. So I was interviewing Kobe Bryant on the show.
Oh my goodness.
And my show's not all celebrities, for people that are wondering. It's mostly not. This just happened to stick out. So I go to his office. It's a hectic, and we're set up like an hour and a half early because they keep moving it. And I'm like, well, I'm not leaving until I have an interview. So I flew down to Orange County to do it. And I just hired this new videographer because my other guy was just focusing on photography. And I was like, I want a separate video and photo guy because it's a big deal. It's a big interview. So the guy goes, "I really have to go to the bathroom." I'm like, "Hurry up because Kobe's going to be here any minute." And he goes, "Fine." Goes to the bathroom. Kobe shows up seconds later. I don't even know. He materialized out of nowhere. I'm like, "Okay, we got to start." So we start, and I'm like, "Where the hell is my video guy?" So my photographer's like, "I don't know." So I'm like, "I know how to control the audio. I'm just going to start the audio. Good thing I didn't delegate that. I was just hiring out the video. Get photos. I'll do the audio." So I'm doing the audio. Finally, my photographer, I go, "Sorry, excuse me, Kobe. Can you go find out where that guy is?" So I send my photographer to the bathroom. The video guy walks in. And he's like, "Sorry, I didn't know we were starting. I thought you guys would come get me." And I'm looking at Kobe, and Kobe's like, "This freaking moron works for you?" And I'm like, "Ugh." And I look at my photographer, and he's like, "Dude, what the hell?" So the video guy finally turns on the cameras, and we do the interview. And I'm like, "What the hell was this?" So at the end, of course, I'm like, "What the hell's the deal?" My YouTube version of my Kobe interview is like 20 minutes long. My podcast version's like 40 minutes long because this idiot was in the bathroom. And I was like, "What happened?" I'm thinking he's going to go, I I'm so sick. I couldn't go in there because I was vomiting and I didn't want to puke in the middle. He goes, oh, I thought you guys would like tell me. And I'm like, I told you to hurry up and come back. Are you, what is your major malfunction, numbnuts? You had one job, and it was interesting because, of course, then when he got back to his boss, because I got him from a firm, oh, he was sick and he had food poisoning. And I'm like, no, no, no. That dude ate a rib sandwich at lunch with the rest of us while we all ignored him because we were all pissed off about this. And what's funny is my whole team, I go, guys, am I being too hard on this guy? Because I'm a little upset. They go, no, you're the nice one. Because I was like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Shit happens. Meanwhile, my team was like, no, it does not happen. I hate this guy. I'm never working with this guy again. So it's kind of funny because I look back now and I go, this is the dumbest human I've probably ever worked with. And just but of course it had to happen on this one really, really, really big interview.
Well, the struggle is real. Your listeners and viewers probably have no idea the effort, the work that goes into your content. I mean, it's and there's just one last question or item I couldn't resist asking you. Your Wikipedia page is fantastic, but you were kidnapped twice. Now, I've never actually known anyone who was kidnapped once, let alone twice. Please explain, because I just couldn't resist asking you about this.
So the first time was kidnap light, diet kidnap. I was 20 years old. I went to Mexico City. I was working for a nonprofit there, and I got into a fake taxi. And I tell the full story on my show because it's like an hour long, but I got into a fake taxi. And I didn't know it was a fake taxi, right? I mean, I thought it was a taxi. And I ended up getting into a physical altercation with the driver. I was 20. All I did was eat carne asada and go to the gym. This guy was 50-something, sat in a cab all day eating burritos, probably tacos, whatever. So, maybe he was eating the same carne asada as me, but he wasn't turning it into muscle. So he was kind of a schlep, and I was like in prime physical condition as a 20-year-old. So that ended in I'm here. That ended in my favor. And then the second time was a few years after that. I was working in Serbia, and I had a fellowship from the Department of Defense. So they were convinced that I was a spy, and their state security guys were like, we're going to interrogate this dude because we caught a spy. It was just dumb, just typical authoritarian, corrupt regime kind of nonsense. And they took me and a friend to a safe house for several hours. I can't even remember all the details because it's a little hazy, but I tell that story on the show too. It's like a 2-part episode about being kidnapped twice. And so that was harrowing. And now I'm older and I'm like, oh my God, what I put my parents through. This is ridiculous. So I have kids now and I'm thinking, oh, please be happy with going to museums or something. Don't go to
no adventure
Yugoslavia.
Travel for you.
Yeah.
Well, stories
or like,
for your grandkids one day who are going to have an amazing library of content to hear about what Grandpa did with his life. And thanks so much, Gordon, for joining me. I know you're very busy. I want to be respectful of your time, and thanks for
all good.
Joining this show. I'm a fan. So onwards and upwards.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Take care. Bye-bye.